Hello and welcome back to anyone and everyone watching. Today I'm continuing my new series, Were They That Bad?, where I reevaluate the careers of supposed NASCAR busts to determine once and for all if their exit from the sport was justified or not. The first episode I made was over Drew Dollar, which you guys really seem to like, so I thought this time, why not talk about arguably the worst Cup Series driver, statistically speaking, of the 2020s so far, Quin Houff. And no, this is not an open and shut case, because even though Quinn performed insufferably in Cup, even taking his backmarker team equipment into account, that wasn't all he had to offer over the course of his relatively short NASCAR career. In 2012, at only 14 years old, Houff made his late model division debut at the highly competitive and historic short track South Boston Speedway, where he finished 10th of 21 cars. For the next 2 years, he continued to race part-time at South Boston with little improvement results-wise, but nevertheless in 2014, Quin Racing let him run their flagship number 52 car in that season's penultimate race at Greenville Pickens Speedway. There, Houff would get caught up in a 4-car incident in lap 74 of 140, and would unfortunately get the worst of it, as he was the only of the 4 drivers to go behind the wall. I was unable to find any footage of the wreck or the race in general, so I have no idea if Quinn was at fault in any way. Regardless, Quinn wouldn't let that early setback hold him back, because the following year he made significant progress at South Boston, still coming up short of a win, but earning his first career top 5, in addition to 5 total top 10s and only 7 starts. But even that was nothing compared to his success that year in his rookie Cars Pro Late Model Tour season. Driving the full 10-race schedule for the LFR Chassis Development Group, Quinn went on to win at Tri-County Motor Speedway and record 5 total top 5s and 7 total top 10s. He also wound up 4th in the final points, just 1 spot behind featured Truck Series champion Zane Smith. In 2016, Quinn returned to the tour with LFR and kicked off the season strong with a win at the season opener at Southern National Motorsports Park over the likes of Smith, Rafael Lessard, Harrison Burton, and Tyler Ankrum. However, after competing in all of the first 7 races, his team shut down their operations in the series, forcing Quinn to sit out for the remaining 3 races. But still, with his average finish of 7.6, he was able to secure a 6th place finish in the final points. The next year, at age 19, Quinn made his first start at the ARCA Menards Series, and his first Super Speedway start for that matter, behind the wheel of Mason Mitchell's 2014 championship-winning number 98 machine. Starting back in 16th, Houff immediately charged to the front, and after electing not to pit during an early debris caution, he would inherit the top spot. Because most of the drivers who did pit only went for fuel, he had just as good of tires as anyone else behind him, and with his teammate Kyle Weatherman pushing him, he went on to lead the next 23 circuits. His reign would come to an end right where it started, though, under caution, as this time, when he did come down pit road, he was trapped in his box due to a messy entrance by the 0-1 car of Travis Braden. But much bigger problems than just a lost track position were on the horizon, because on lap 65, Quinn sustained race-ending damage in a multi-car incident. If he had been able to make his way back to the front and finish merely inside the top 10, there's a good chance Quinn would have continued to receive opportunities in ARCA, and his career could have taken a much better path. But instead, that bitter disappointment was all that was in store for him that ARCA season, and besides 2 starts in the Cars Tour, the only national-level events he competed in were in the Xfinity Series. Starting at the spring Bristol race, Precision Performance Motorsports, or PPM, decided to hire Quinn for a part-time schedule in their number 46 Chevy. If that team name doesn't ring a bell, that's probably because they were only around in NASCAR for 3 years, and unfortunately for Quinn, he was entering during the last of them. No matter, in the Bristol race he qualified an impressive 21st place, and by the second stage was running comfortably inside the top 15. All the while, he managed to hang on to the lead lap by a string as he held off a dominating Kyle Larson just long enough to earn the free pass on 2 separate occasions. At the time of the second-to-last caution of the day with 30 laps to go, Quinn had climbed up as high as 10th, and given that it would be a near impossible task for him to finish top 5, let alone win the race, he had surely caught the attention of many fans and team owners. By the way, the previously mentioned caution was for Ross Chastain, who cut a tire and slammed hard into the outside wall just inches away from Houff's front end. Having avoided near disaster, Houff crossed the line at 15th, sure having fallen back a few spots since the restart, but nonetheless putting together an incredible performance for a small team. His next race at Richmond went a bit closer to expected, finishing 27th and 3 laps off the pace, but his third attempt at Iowa, he was due for another standout run. Similar to Richmond, Houff spent most of his race outside the top 20, and was even a lap down before his race was saved by a late race caution. Because he had not yet pitted, not only did he get his lap back right before the caution came out, but he would restart all the way up in 12th after getting service under yellow. With a few big names trapped off the lead lap as they pitted right before the caution, and a few more out of contention from crash damage, Quinn was able to hold it right where he restarted and cross the line in P12. While William Byron took home the win for Junior Motorsports, the race was a major success for many other small team drivers besides just Houff. Some of those upset finishes included Ryan Sieg coming in runner-up, Ross Chastain coming in 4th for JD Motorsports, Dakota Armstrong coming in 5th for JGL Racing, the other JD Motorsports driver Garrett Smithley rounding out the top 10, and Tommy Joe Martins winding up 11th for BJ McLeod Motorsports. Following the Iowa race, Houff made 4 more attempts with PPM, which resulted in 2 DNQs, a P27 at Kentucky, and a P22 at Kansas. While that was certainly not the way he wanted to end his season, I would still say he did a lot better than he was expected to, thanks to his impressive showings on the short tracks. But he didn't do quite enough to earn any better opportunities come 2018, as the only racing he would do for the first half of that year was in ARCA. There, Houff would race 4 times for Mason Mitchell's team, again crashing out in the opening race at Daytona, but bouncing back to score top 10s at both Charlotte and Michigan. Towards the end of 2018, JD Motorsports made a quick deal with Houff to bring him in for 5 of the remaining 7 Xfinity Series races. Starting at Richmond, Houff was hanging right around 25th before non-terminal mechanical failures forced him to go multiple laps down early on in the second stage. In his next race at Kansas, he came up with a much better result, not necessarily because his car had better pace, but because a majority of the regular frontrunners got into trouble. First, on the opening lap, Justin Allgaier got loose exiting turn 2 and slid up the track into Christopher Bell and Austin Cindric. The chain reaction that followed not only caused enough damage to put all 3 of the previously mentioned drivers behind the wall for the day, but it also ended Michael Annett's day and caused Cole Custer to go multiple laps down due to repairs. Over the course of that race, Joe Gibbs Racing's Brandon Jones would have a bit of a skill issue while battling for the lead. His teammate Ryan Preece would wreck out of 3rd place after getting tangled up in a mess between the lap cars of Garrett Smithley and Joey Gaze, and Chase Briscoe, who also picked up considerable damage from the lap 1 crash, would retire with suspension damage. So, with considerably less competition at the finish than at the start, Houff just ran his own race, and despite going 4 laps down, he still came home a solid 14th place. The next and final 3 Xfinity races of 2018 went about the same as far as Quinn's performance, but with no such handouts like those at Kansas, he could only manage a P26 and 2 P29s. At this point in his career, Quin Houff was just an average, inexperienced driver in the lower divisions of NASCAR. In his few opportunities thus far, he had shown he could lead laps in top-level ARCA equipment, and at the end of the Xfinity Series, he could take care of his cars and get an upset finish every once in a while. He hadn't necessarily done anything noteworthy enough to justify a full-time ride with a big truck or Xfinity team based purely on merit, but he also wasn't underperforming by any means. With that said, where would Quinn be headed for 2019? Potentially a bigger schedule with JD Motorsports, maybe a full-time ARCA ride, or maybe even some select Xfinity or truck stars for a bigger organization? Well, the answer is none of the above, because in 2019, Quinn would take his talents right into the Cup Series and never look back. That year, he partnered up with the then brand new Spire Motorsports team for a total of 12 races, and to say the least, they had zero expectations. In nearly every start together, Houff's number 77 car was only rivaled as the slowest car on occasion by some of the Rickwer Racing entries, but to his credit, he only posted 1 crash-related DNF. In the later half of the season, Houff also signed on with Premium Motorsports for 5 races, all of which resulted in more or less the same finishes he got with Spire Motorsports. Looking back on his first season in the Cup Series, Quin Houff raced 17 times, with the best finish of 28th coming at Charlotte, an average finish of 32.6, and that's about all there is to say about it. Quinn certainly isn't the only driver in recent memory to have entered the Cup Series without any notable experience or achievements. Take, for example, Cody Ware, who began racing full-time for his father's Cup team in 2021, despite never coming close to running a full truck or Xfinity season. Although not quite as extreme of an example, there's Corey LaJoie, who by now has quite a bit of Cup experience, but other than scoring multiple wins in ARCA and the East Series roughly a decade ago, had no real reason to be hired by any Cup teams based solely on experience or results. So when StarCom Racing announced that Quin Houff would be taking over the 0-0 machine full-time in 2020, sure it was a bit confusing as to why they selected him, but it was not at all an unprecedented decision. The main reason some fans had a distasteful first impression of Houff is because he'd be replacing one of the sport's more popular underdogs, Landon Castle. After racing for StarCom for the majority of the 2018 season and full-time in 2019, Castle done well for the underfunded team, scoring them 4 top 20 finishes, all while behind the wheel of a car that should have been off the lead lap in just about every race. In both years, his average finish was also inside the top 30 with a 29.7 in 2018 and a 29.3 in 2019. If StarCom Racing was looking to make any type of progress results-wise, they would have stuck with Castle at least for the short term. but instead they opted for the alleged paid driver of Houff. Houff's official rookie year in the Cup Series started out with just as miserable of performance as he had for Spire Motorsports the year prior, except this time he got involved in a fair share of on-track incidents. Following the first 15 races, he'd only finished inside the top 33 times, the best of 26 in the second race of the Darlington doubleheader, and he'd crashed out 3 times. But for the most part, he was right in line with the other backmarkers, such as the Rick Ware Racing, Spire Motorsports, NBM Motorsports, and Premium Motorsports teams. That was up until the 18th race of the season at Texas, while running in 26th place, 9 laps off the pace. He had a bit of a mishap trying to get to pit road. With only 29 laps to go, Houff was looking to make his final scheduled green flag pit stop of the day, but apparently both he and the Spider briefly disconnected from the outside world as he blended down the track directly into 95 of Christopher Bell. Houff's out-of-control car then fell right into the path of Matt DiBenedetto, and the resulting contact redirected Houff headfirst into the outside wall, completely totaling his car. Luckily for Bell and DiBenedetto, they pretty much only received cosmetic damage and were able to finish just about right where they were running prior to the crash, but nonetheless, Quinn's mistake was heavily criticized. I agree they should have taken some heat for it, but he soon turned into an easy scapegoat for a much bigger issue. In the late 2010s and even into 2020 and 2021, there were a good amount of similar incidents, often caused by inexperienced Rick Ware Racing drivers, to the point that many fans and even other drivers were asking NASCAR to take action. Isolating this incident, if it was any other driver who made the same mistake as Quinn, sure, they would have been heavily criticized, but for Quinn, this was his first impression on a lot of fans, so it's much more impactful. Or at least for those fans who didn't already know him, purely for being one of the slowest guys on track, or for crashing out by himself a few times earlier in the season. In fact, the backlash was so bad that upon driver and fan recommendation, NASCAR began considering demoting inexperienced drivers out of the Cup Series if they were to make similarly reckless mistakes in the future. After Texas, Quinn finished every race under power except for the finale at Phoenix, where he went behind the wall with handling problems. But the whole time he continued to suffer through a significant lack of speed, so bad that he typically couldn't even keep up with the main pack at super speedways. In the fall Talladega race, though, that came back to help him, because with only 25 cars running by the final overtime restart and about half of them with some amount of damage, Houff just held his own line and avoided all the final lap chaos to cross the line in 15th. Then, following post-race penalties given to Matt DiBenedetto and Chris Buescher, Houff was officially credited with a 13th place, by far the best finish of his Cup career. All in all, Houff had just about the kind of rookie season he could have been expected to. Obviously, no top 10s, an average finish of 31.3, and the worst points finish of any full-time driver of 33rd. By the way, Kyle Larson, who only raced 4 times in 2020 due to his suspension, still had more than half of Houff's total points at the season's end. But when putting him against other backmarker drivers is a whole different story. In owners' points, for example, much better metric than drivers' points to compare smaller teams and drivers, he ranked 35th ahead of 3 other full-time entries, the Rick Ware Racing number 53, the NBM Motorsports number 66, which is driven in every race by Timmy Hill, by the way, and the Rick Ware Racing number 51. Teams ahead of Quinn in StarCom and comparable equipment included Daniel Suarez with the Gaunt Brothers Racing, Brennan Poole with Premium Motorsports, the Rick Ware Racing number 27, and the Spire Motorsports number 77. So looking at it that way, Quinn was just a mediocre small team driver, if that makes any sense. But if he could be considered even mediocre in 2020, there is no way around saying he performed badly the next year. Back with StarCom for another full-time season, he proceeded to crash out 7 times and brought to a whopping 10 total DNFs. And not only that, but his best finish was a P19 the fall Talladega race. He was once again the worst of all full-time points-earning drivers, and this time he ended up with exactly half as many points as the guy who finished just 1 spot ahead of him, Anthony Alfredo. Even looking at the owner's points, the number 00 car finished behind every other full-time car, including both Spire Motorsports cars, the Live Fast Motorsports number 78, and all 4 of the Rick Ware Racing Clown Shuttles. And if you thought all of that was embarrassing, in my opinion, the worst statistic of Quinn's 2021 season was that the Colleague Racing number 16 car that only raced 9 times also finished ahead of StarCom Racing in owner's points. Again, there's really no way to put a spin on it. Quinn had an abysmal sophomore slump in the Cup Series. In addition to their major performance struggles, StarCom Racing was also facing major struggles to find funding, and after purchasing a next-gen car that they tested with driver Kaz Grala, they would sell their team charter and most of their equipment before the start of the 2022 season. As they did not attempt a single race in 2022, it is safe to say they left NASCAR entirely, and in their time in the sport, they at least broke one record, the most expensive charter sale. Yeah, StarCom was able to sucker in a desperate 2311 Racing to spend $13.5 million on it, as 2311 had already signed on Kurt Busch to compete for them full-time in their new number 45 car. While team manager Derek Cope's cut of that was probably enough to send him sailing off into the sunset for good, the other three co-owners, William Wooleman, Michael Kohler, and Matthew Kohler, put their sights on the new Money Team Racing. None of them are listed as owners of the Money Team, but their partnership is evident because the planned 2022 StarCom Racing driver Kaz Grala would end up driving for them in 3 of their 4 attempts that season, and because, well, the StarCom Fiber logo was on the car's B-post. For a while, it was rumored that Quinn would return to the Xfinity Series, where he'd shown flashes of potential before. Still only 24 years old, he would easily have time to develop as a driver and make it back to the Cup Series at some point potentially if he did well in the lower series. But not a single team in NASCAR was willing to take a chance on him, and with his own lack of funding, he has yet to attempt a single race since the 2021 Cup season finale at Phoenix. He hasn't completely hung up the helmet yet as he raced late models part-time in 2022, and if all goes his way, he could still realistically get picked up by a small NASCAR team for 2023. Right now, though, I'd argue that yes, Quin Houff was absolutely as bad as people remember him to be in the Cup Series, but that was only because he was rushed up through the lower divisions quicker than just about every other full-time Cup driver in NASCAR history, and for no reason related to his talent. If I had to guess, his best and likely only opportunity was to settle down with StarCom and Cup and make the most of it, so that's just what he did. And who would have known, his results were pretty bad. Based on his short stint in the Xfinity Series and his late model achievements, I would still vouch for Quinn to get a ride in the lower series of NASCAR. Even though he accomplished basically nothing in Cup, he surely gained experience in those years to be very beneficial to, say, a struggling trucker Xfinity team. But as of now, Quinn remains without a ride, and unless he gets that second shot in NASCAR, his time in the sport will quickly be forgotten, and for those that do remember him, it will be for his Texas incident and various other rookie mistakes. And that is all for today. Thank you all very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, as you won't want to miss out on any other future videos in this series. Also, right now, my plan for content during the regular season is to make a weekly winners and losers series, where I pick out the 3 or 5 big winners and big losers from each of the truck, Xfinity, and Cup races, and talk about them all in one big video. The first episode of that will come after the Daytona 500 weekend, so stay tuned for that. Please let me know down in the comments if that sounds of interest to you guys for the whole 2023 season, or if you have any other suggestions for what I should do. But yeah, that's all for today, so until next time, peace out.